Chapter 1. The fourth deadbolt. The lock clicked. Not the first, not the second, or even the third. Those had been standard, installed when they'd built the place 5 years ago. This was the fourth. A heavy, matte black deadbolt that hadn't existed yesterday, now slid home with a sound like a gun chambering around. Click. Zen didn't flinch. She was too busy trying to remember if she owned 4 matching socks. "I'm going to pretend," she said, staring at the row of ceramic roosters on the windowsill, "that you're securing us against a door-kicking bear and not say my ability to walk through walls." Declan's hand found the small of her back, not guiding, anchoring. His palm pressed the thin cotton of her tank top until she could feel the heat of him through the fabric, furnace-hot and possessive. "Bears," he said, his voice a rumble that still carried the gravel of the wolf, "are apex predators with excellent manners. They knock. And what am I?" His fingers flexed, spreading, claiming the space above her hip bone like he was marking coordinates on a map. "Mine. Here. You're the woman who walked 400 miles in her sleep. You don't get to be insulted by deadbolts." He crowded her toward the kitchen island. Granite. Cold. She'd picked the slab herself 5 years ago, back when supernatural threat had meant a rogue alpha at the territorial line, not whatever had pulled her north. Now Declan caged her against it, arms bracketing her hips, palms flat on the counter on either side of her thighs, a prison built of warm muscle and trembling control. "You're vibrating," she observed, tilting her head back to look at him. "No. You're literally radiating at a frequency that's making the silverware hum." "I'm fine." "You burned the toast, Declan." He glanced at the smoking toaster. Black curls of carbon rose from the slot like a curse. He stared at it with the kind of betrayal usually reserved for infidelity, then scraped the charred remains into the sink with surgical aggression. 2 more slices went in, lever down, immediate smoke. "I'm expressing myself," he muttered. "You're having a nervous breakdown with a bread product." The second batch popped, golden. He cut it into triangles like she was 5, and pushed the plate toward her with such careful precision she half expected him to arrange the crusts into a protective rune. "Eat," he said. "Talk." She took a bite. It tasted like cardboard and ash, but it was warm, and her hands were still shaking from the helicopter. "You promised me cellular instinct theory, and instead you spent the flight trying to absorb me through osmosis. I could feel you trying to merge your cells with mine. It was invasive, like mitosis level invasive." He dragged a hand through his hair. Pine needles. She could see them now, tangled in the dark strands. Impossible, because the pine species they came from grew 300 miles east, at elevation, and they'd flown west to get home. His eyes were too dark, pupils blown wide, the glacier blue bleeding into black. "You felt calm," he said. Not a question. Zen nodded. The toast suddenly felt heavy in her stomach. "Like thunder that sounded like music. It felt like help me, like someone needed—" "Yeah." His jaw tightened. "That's the trap." He moved behind her again, not asking permission, his heat pressed along her spine, his arms returning to their cage around the counter, his chest against her back. She was trapped in the triangle of his body, the island cold at her front, Declan a furnace at her rear. Through the bond, that golden thread that had first hooked her 6 years ago, now thick as a rope, she felt his pulse, too fast, a rabbit's heartbeat in a wolf's chest. "My instincts aren't smarter than yours," he said, his mouth against her ear. She felt the vibration of his words in her ribs. "They're just older, woven into the blood so deep I don't need to think. When that thing opened up, I didn't process predator. I just felt my pulse spike, like pulling your hand from a fire before the burn registers." "Genetic memory," she said quietly. "Ancestors who crossed between realms." His hand slid up her shoulder, thumb tracing her collarbone, with a touch that was checking for damage, fingers trembling. "I learned that light without heat means something is hunting in the spaces between." She turned on the stool. He didn't move back. Her knees bracketed his hips, her bare feet dangling. She was wearing pajama pants, thin cotton, the ones with the coffee stains on the left knee, and his gaze dropped to them, then froze. He grabbed her ankle. "Hey!" His hand wrapped around her arch, lifting her foot. The sock, white cotton, the kind she bought in bulk, caught the morning light from the window. Spotless, pristine, no mud from the mountain trail, no blood from the blisters she should have had after walking 400 miles in borrowed boots that had been left at the safe house. The wool was as white as the day she'd pulled it from the drawer, as if the earth had refused to touch her. But it was more than that. There was no scent, no pine, no mountain loam, no alpine sage. Even the cotton smelled only of her drawer lavender, not of the journey. Declan's thumb pressed into her instep. She could see his throat work. "Look at your nails," he said, softly. She did. Clean. No dirt packed under the cuticles. No scratches from the brambles that should have torn at her on the cliff face. She'd walked 400 miles, jumped into his arms at the edge of a precipice, and her body carried no evidence of the journey except the exhaustion in her bones and the otherness in her mind. "I didn't walk," she realized. "Not all of it. I walked to the tree line, and then..." "Then you were carried," he finished. His voice cracked. "Something moved you, something that didn't want you touching the ground, because the ground remembers. The earth remembers what walks on it. But air keeps no memory." He set her foot down gently, then his hands were on her face, cupping her jaw with a reverence that terrified her more than the deadbolts. His grip was possessive, desperate, his thumbs gentle against her cheekbones as if she were porcelain. 36 hours, he whispered. "That's how long it's going to take my nervous system to believe you're solid, to stop seeing that light every time I blink." "Okay," she said. She leaned into his touch, letting him feel her weight, her warmth, her return. 36 hours, but I'm not a prisoner, Declan. I'm a comrade. I walked out of that hellscape under my own power because you taught me to be strong enough to come back." His forehead dropped to hers, heavy, trembling. She felt the wolf in him quiet, just slightly. "Comrades," he repeated. "Not keeper and kept?" "Never." She grabbed the front of his shirt, torn at the shoulder, smelling of wild things and frozen altitude, and pulled him in. "But I'll accept 36 hours of excessive protection on one condition." "Name it." "You stop installing deadbolts. 4 is enough. 5 is just you being dramatic." "I'm protecting my mate." "You're protecting your anxiety." She bit his lower lip, just hard enough to make his breath hitch. "And you're doing the dishes tonight. You're also going to wash my hair, tell me 3 things you love about me that don't involve my pulse rate, and you're going to try not to growl at the smoke detector when you inevitably burn the bacon." Declan's hand slid down to her hips. He lifted her, easy, supernatural strength, and set her on the edge of the island, bringing them eye to eye. "I can do that?" "No brooding," she warned. "I'll try. No standing outside the shower like a Victorian chaperone." "I'm coming in," he promised, his palms spread across her thighs, fingers pressing in. "I'm washing your hair, and I'm going to mark you with soap until my hands stop shaking." "Kinky," she teased. "Practical," he corrected. But he was smiling now, the first real one since the cliff. His thumb traced her cheekbone again, softer this time. "Predators avoid marked territory." She opened her mouth to deliver a sharp retort about hygiene products and possessive behavior, but movement caught her eye. A single pine needle, dislodged from his hair by their closeness, drifted down between them. It landed on the granite counter, green and silver, long as a finger, a species that grew only in the high alpine, in the place where the air was thin and the rifts were thin too. It lay there between them, physical proof of the distance he'd carried her, the impossible geography they'd crossed. Zen went still. Declan followed her gaze, his hand left her hip, moving to cover the needle, but she caught his wrist. "Leave it," she said quietly. "Evidence." "Evidence," he agreed, his voice rough. "And a reminder you came back, you chose to." 36 hours, she reminded him, but her hand was trembling now too, laced through his. He picked her up. Not the bridal carry, he'd done that for 400 miles. This was simpler. He just lifted her against his chest, her legs around his waist, and held her there while the toaster smoked again in the background and the rooster clock ticked away the seconds. 36 hours, he growled against her neck. "Then we figure out how to turn your empathy into a weapon instead of a weakness?" "Deal," she said into his shoulder. "But first, conditioner. And emotional processing. And your hands in my hair until you stop vibrating." He was already moving toward the stairs, her weight nothing to him. The 4th deadbolt locked behind them, the pine needle left glowing silver on the counter in the morning light. "Hold on tight, Luna," he said. She already was. Chapter 2, The Void in the Pattern. The office smelled like testosterone, printer ink, and the particular ozone scent of a shifter who hadn't slept in 36 hours. Declan sat behind the mahogany slab of his desk, ruling behind it, really, spine straight, shoulders blocking the window, while trying to review territorial patrol routes with his lieutenants. There was just one logistical problem. Zen was in his lap. Not cuddled, not perched, installed. Declan's left arm was locked around her waist like a seatbelt engineered by a paranoid engineer, his hand splayed across her stomach in a way that said mine, in 17 different dialects. She had a tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, balancing both with the practiced grace of a woman who had accepted that her husband was currently using her as a human stress ball. Increased rotation to every 4 hours, Warren was saying, his eyes fixed determinedly on the ceiling molding. Northern Ridge is showing signs of activity? Define activity, Declan rumbled. His thumb traced a circle on Zen's hip bone. She could feel his heartbeat against her back, still too fast, a thoroughbred's gallop. Electrical disturbances, static cling, the birds are flying south in July. That's migration confusion, not evidence, Suki said from the doorway, her voice as dry as the file she carried. She stepped in, heels clicking on the hardwood, and deposited a manila folder on the desk with the efficiency of a missile strike. Also, the pine needle analysis is back from Dr. Alara, and the perimeter logs show the motion sensors tripped at exactly 12:07 for the past 3 nights. Zen stiffened. 12:07? AM, Suki confirmed, adjusting her glasses. Preceding the incident, consistent timestamp. Declan's arm tightened. Show me the logs. I've got them, Suki said, but she was looking at Zen with something like professional pity. Also, Alpha, respectfully, if you're going to insist on the Luna remaining in physical integration for the duration of the crisis, I could have engineering install a modified sling for efficiency, or perhaps a harness system. Warren made a strangled noise. I have legs, Zen said, swiveling her coffee cup like a weapon. They're lovely legs. They've walked on many surfaces, including recently apparently thin air. Your legs, Declan said, his voice vibrating against her spine, are currently on secured military timeout. Is that a thing? Is that in the bylaws? It's in my bylaws. His hand slid up to her ribs, fingers spreading to take up more real estate. The pine needle, burn it. Absolutely not, Zen twisted, nearly spilling coffee on the territorial maps. It's evidence. It's forensic proof that I didn't walk 400 miles. That species, Pinus albicollis, only grows at elevation in the exact zone where you found me. If I'd walked, I'd have mountain debris in my hair, mud in my nails, blisters on my feet. Instead, I have spa day cleanliness and 1 alpine souvenir. Something moved me, Declan. Something carried me through space without letting my feet touch ground, and that needle is the receipt. The room had gone quiet. Torn was staring at his boots. Fallon appeared to be memorizing the grain pattern in the wall. Declan's hand stopped its possessive tracing. He reached past her, his arm a bridge over her chest, and flicked open the manila folder. The pine needle lay inside, sealed in plastic, glowing silver green against the sterile white. It's north-facing, he said softly. Everything north-facing is compromised. It's a plant, Zen said. It's a beacon. He closed the folder but didn't pull his arm back. Instead, he caged her in, both arms on the desk now, his chin over her shoulder. She could feel his breath at her neck, shallow, controlled, a predator trying to pass a breathalyzer. It's pointing the way back to the rift. Suki cleared her throat. If I may, the Luna has a point. Destruction of evidence aside, if the entity, whatever took her, is using organic matter as markers, we need to understand the vector. Is it fungal, bacterial, interdimensional photosynthesis? She adjusted her glasses. Also, the forum suggests that marking territory with the mate's scent is more effective than physical restraint for long term. I'm not marking her like a tree, Declan growled. You're holding her like a backpack, Suki observed. She's portable, Declan snapped. I'm portable? Zen twisted in his grip, managing to plant an elbow in his solar plexus. He didn't flinch, but he did exhale sharply through his nose. I'm a Luna, not a tactical lunchbox. Suki, give me those logs. Suki slid the papers across the desk. Zen grabbed them, scanning the timestamps. 12:07 a.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 3 nights before the disappearance. I woke up, Zen said slowly. Every night at this time, I thought it was just some adjustment, jet lag from you being in the city. But I felt something, a pull, like a golden thread. Declan went still behind her. You didn't tell me. I couldn't remember it in the morning. It was like dream residue. Until now. She tapped the paper. It was testing me, measuring the signal, and when you left for the Marcus case, when the anchor was gone. I rushed back, Declan said quietly. His hand moved from her stomach to her hand, lacing their fingers together. She could feel the tremor in his palm. the vibration he'd been trying to hide since the cliff. I felt it the minute you crossed the tree line, through the bond. You felt calm. That's what terrified me. You were walking into a rift and you felt calm. Like, help me, Zen whispered. Like someone needed. Don't, Declan's voice cracked. Don't say it. Don't open the door with your voice. Warren shifted uncomfortably. Alpha, perhaps we should relocate the briefing to the war room if the Luna is being targeted via temporal signatures. We're done, Declan said. He stood up, lifting Zen with him, one arm under her knees, one around her back, the papers fluttering to the floor. Meeting adjourned. Suki, file the needle under hazardous interdimensional flora. Warren, double the northern perimeter. If anything blinks at 12:07, shoot it. Oh, put me down, Zen squirmed as he strode toward the door. I was participating in that meeting. You were inventorying your own abduction, Declan said, his jaw set. You're done investigating for the day. I'm investigating until I understand why my socks were clean. That's not traumatized behavior, that's curiosity. Your curiosity nearly got you digested by a planewalker. He carried her into the kitchen, because of course the kitchen was where he deposited her, as if calories could fix existential dread, and set her on the counter. Again. The granite was cold against her thighs. The microwave hummed behind her, its dark glass door reflecting the morning light. Declan turned to the fridge, pulling out lunch meats with the desperate energy of a man trying to build a sandwich that could ward off evil. Zen looked at the microwave. Her reflection looked back. It should have been tired. She certainly felt tired. It should have had the smudged mascara and the wild hair and the furrowed brow that currently inhabited her face. But the reflection was smiling, a small, serene smile, the kind you wore when you were finally home after a long trip. The reflection's lips moved. Help me, it mouthed. You're warm, Zen screamed. The sound wasn't voluntary. It tore out of her throat like something ripping free. She slid backward on the counter, knocking over the coffee, her hand flailing for a weapon and finding the toaster. She hurled it. The appliance sailed past Declan's head and smashed into the microwave door. Glass shattered. The reflection vanished. Declan was on her in a blink, not touching her but shielding her, his body between her and the broken glass, his eyes scanning the room with feral intensity. Where? He snarled. Where is it? In the glass, Zen gasped, her heart hammering against her ribs. In the reflection, it was smiling. I wasn't smiling, but it was. It said... She pressed her palm to her mouth. It said I was warm. Declan turned slowly to look at the destroyed microwave, then at her, then at the window, which faced north. 12:07, he said. Softly. It's noon. 12 hours off. It's getting bolder. Zen slid down from the counter, her legs shaking, and grabbed his arm. Not for comfort, for solidarity. To make him see her, not the threat. It's not just a rift, she said. It's a mouth, and it's learning how to use the silverware. Declan's hand found hers. His fingers were still trembling, but his grip was iron. 36 hours, he said. Don't start, she said. 36 hours, he repeated, pulling her close, until we figure out how to turn your empathy into a blade. But first, I'm boarding up the windows, and you're staying in my lap. For efficiency, she asked, her voice thin. For survival. Behind them, Suki's voice drifted in from the hallway, dry and practical. I'll add mirror protocol to the security checklist, and Alpha, the toaster is smoking again. It was, because of course it was. Zen leaned her forehead against Declan's shoulder and let him hold her while the smoke alarm began to chirp its warning song. Chapter 3. The Wolf's Run. The mahogany conference table in the Carver Holdings boardroom was designed to intimidate lesser predators. It spanned 20 feet, cut from a single black walnut tree, and it currently held the future of 300 square miles of shifter territory. Declan sat at the head, his lawyer's briefcase unopened beside him, while Alpha Marcus, a silver-haired wolf who'd held his territory since the Eisenhower administration, paced the windows overlooking Chicago's skyline. $2 billion, Marcus growled. That's what the Wind Farm Consortium is offering the state to eminent domain my hunting grounds. $2 billion to turn my territory into pinwheels. His eyes flashed amber. I need sovereignty status, Declan. I need it today. Declan's phone buzzed against his thigh, once, twice, 3 times. He ignored it. The precedents are shaky. The Bureau of Preternatural Affairs is watching this case. If we push for territorial immunity and lose, every alpha in the continental U.S. loses jurisdictional authority. Then don't lose, Marcus said. The phone buzzed again. Declan glanced at the screen. Suki. 3 calls, then a text, auto-corrected into gibberish terror. She's gone. Noth. He've gone. Declan stood so fast his chair hit the glass wall behind him. The sound was like a gunshot. Marcus stopped pacing. Adjourned, Declan said. This is a $2 billion... Litigate it yourself, Declan was already moving, shrugging off his suit jacket, leaving the silk tie hanging like a surrender flag. I'm sorry, Marcus, I'm sorry. He shifted in the elevator, not fully, just enough to let the wolf flood his sinuses with sensory clarity, enough to catch Zen's scent on his shirt collar, jasmine, graphite, the ozone tang of her fear. The bond pulled taut in his chest, a golden thread spinning out from his sternum, pointing north by northwest with magnetic insistence. 400 miles, 3 hours. Impossible. Physiologically impossible. A wolf could sprint 35 miles per hour briefly, sustainably run 15, and cover 40 miles in a day if fed and unburdened. 400 miles would take 10 hours minimum, more likely 15. Zen had been gone for 45 minutes. The roof. He needed the roof. Declan burst onto the helipad, the wind whipping his shirt into rags. His pilot, Jax, already had the rotors spinning. Suki had called ahead. Suki, who was efficient even in apocalypse. Declan didn't buckle in. He sat with his forehead pressed against the vibrating glass, his eyes closed, following that golden thread as it stretched thinner and thinner, a fishing line about to snap. How far? Jax shouted over the engine. Territorial edge, the Alpine Ridge. We'll never make it in time, in nut. Get me to the tree line, get me to where the air gets thin. They flew for 90 minutes. Declan spent every second of it tearing at his own skin. The wolf was screaming beneath his ribs, clawing to get out, to run. The human mind knew about fuel limitations, muscle fatigue, metabolic collapse. The wolf knew only that his mate was warm and moving away from him, fast, impossibly fast, along pathways that shouldn't exist. The helicopter banked hard. Below them, the continental forest gave way to the Rockies with geological violence, pine and spruce suddenly becoming granite and ice. There, Jax pointed. Declan saw it, a distortion in the air above the tree line, like heat shimmer in winter, a thin spot, a rift. And the scent, jasmine, overwhelming, wrong. Declan didn't wait for landing. He kicked open the door at 200 feet, the wind tearing at him, and he shifted. The change was agony and relief, bones breaking and reforming, skin becoming fur, the suit shredding off his body like shed skin. He hit the canopy not as a man but as a wolf, a massive timber, 180 pounds of predator, and he didn't stop. He hit the ground running. The world bent. This was the secret. The humans didn't know. The reason shifters could hold territories too large to patrol by natural law. The spirit paths, shortcuts through the fabric of the world, genetic memory routes worn into reality by 10,000 years of wolf feet. Declan ran not through the forest, but along it, the trees blurring into streaks of green and brown, the air thinning as the altitude jumped in sickening increments. He wasn't covering ground. He was slipping between the seams. Mile 100. His paws should have been bleeding. They weren't touching earth long enough to blister. Mile 200. The scent trail wasn't physical. No broken branches, no disturbed leaves. It was emotional, calm, wrong. A thread of serene gold in the air that tasted like Zen, but felt like a trap. Mile 300. The Alpine Zone. The air was thin enough to choke a human. Declan's wolf lungs burned, but the bond pulled tighter, a rope hauling him forward through space that shouldn't exist. He burst into a clearing at 12,000 feet. The cliff face dropped away into nothing, a sheer cut of granite that fell for 2,000 feet into a glacial valley. And there, inches from the edge, wearing cotton pajamas and one of his flannel shirts, stood Zen. She was pristine. Her feet were bare, sockless, spotless, too clean. The wind tore at her hair, but she didn't shiver. She was looking at the empty air above the cliff, her head tilted like she was listening to a lullaby. Behind her, the air folded. It wasn't a portal. It wasn't a door. It was an absence of light that somehow had depth, a bruise in the sky that smelled of vacuum, an old starlight. And inside it, Declan saw something. Tall, silver. A shape that hurt to focus on because it existed in angles the human mind hadn't evolved to process. Zen! The wolf voice was a bark, a snarl, a demand. She took a step toward the void. Her lips moved. Help me! You're warm! Declan didn't hesitate. He coiled his hind legs and leapt, shifting midair, the transition a blaze of agony, bones lengthening, fur receding, hands reaching. He became human in the split second before impact, naked and vulnerable and desperate, and he caught her around the waist as gravity seized them both. They fell. Not far, 5 feet 10, he twisted in the air, taking the impact on his shoulder against the cliff face, his legs wrapping around hers, his hand clawing at the granite. His fingers found a crack, a root, something to hold, and he stopped them, dangling there, the void hissing above them like a wound. Zen blinked. The lullaby broke, her eyes focused, brown, terrified, hers. "Declan?" "I've got you," he gasped. Blood ran from his shoulder where he'd hit the stone. "I've got you. Don't look up. Don't look at it." Above them, the folded space was closing, but not before something silver fell from it. A single pine needle. It drifted down, spinning, and landed in Zen's hair. It glowed. "Close your eyes," Declan commanded, his voice breaking. "Close them. Bind them to mine. Anchor, Zen. Anchor now." She did. Her hands found his face, her fingers pressing into his cheekbones, her breath hot against his mouth. The bond flared, golden and furious, and the void above them screamed, a sound like static in mourning, before it snapped shut. They hung there for a long moment, the wind battering them, the cliff face cold against his back. Declan's arm was screaming, his shoulder dislocated, his naked skin turning blue in the alpine chill. "You walked," Zen whispered, her teeth chattering. "You ran. Declan, that's impossible. That's—" "Don't," he said. He pulled her closer, pressing her face into his neck, blocking her view of the drop. "Don't talk, don't think, just hold on." "Your hands," she said, shocked into stillness. "You're shaking." "I know." He climbed them up, one-handed. It took 20 minutes. When they crested the ridge, Jax was there with blankets, with morphine, with a satellite phone screaming Suki's voice. But Declan didn't let go. He carried Zen to the helicopter, her body folded into his chest, her feet, bare, clean, impossibly free of frostbite, curled against his stomach. In the chopper, under the blankets, he finally looked at her socks. She wasn't wearing any. She'd left them by the bed, clean, white, untouched by mountain stone. He remembered them now, how they'd smelled only of lavender, how the lack of scent trail had been a clue he hadn't understood. "She was hiding you," Declan realized aloud, his voice hoarse. "Not just carrying you, hiding you. No scent, no trail, no evidence. She didn't want anything following you back." Zen looked up at him, eyes wide. "Hiding me from what?" Declan pressed his face into her hair and shook until the aircraft touched down. Chapter 4. Negative space. The ravens hit the windows at dawn, not birds. Bullets with feathers. Zen was monitoring the toast from her position behind the kitchen island, her coffee mug held like a shield. "If you burn the sourdough, I swear I'll thwack." An apple hit her forehead. It wasn't a gentle toss. It was a projectile launched with supernatural speed and terrible accuracy, green and glossy and solid as a baseball. It bounced off her skull with a bonk that sounded wet, dropped to the granite, and rolled under the stool. "Ow," Zen said, rubbing her temple. "That was my brain." "Your brain needs to wake up," Declan said. He was barefoot in the kitchen, wearing sweatpants and nothing else, his hair still damp from the shower. In his right hand he held an orange, in his left, a pear. Behind him on the counter sat a pine bowl full of ammunition, grapes, a grapefruit, 2 bananas, and something that looked dangerously like a coconut. "You're supposed to dodge." "I was monitoring carbohydrates." "You're supposed to be monitoring intent." He shifted his weight, and she saw his shoulder muscles coil the same way they'd coiled on the cliff right before he jumped. "Feel it before I throw it. The golden thread. It's not telepathy, it's empathy. You're reading the emotional signature of the threat." Zen glared at him over her mug. The emotional signature of that apple was malicious. It was eager. There's a difference. "I'm going to put pineapple on your pizza." "That's a war crime, Luna, even for you." He threw the orange. She didn't move, partly because she was still seeing stars from the apple, partly because she was trying to do what he'd described, feel him through the bond. The golden thread hummed in her chest, a filament of warmth connecting her sternum to wherever he was in the room. She tried to listen to it, to hear his intent the way she'd heard the voice in the microwave. There. A spike of concentration, a dart of... The orange hit her shoulder. "Damn it," she yelped, coffee sloshing. "You're blocking," Declan said, circling the island. He moved like a shark, all fluid predation, while she felt like a wounded seal. "You're trying to read me like a book. Don't read, feel. It's the difference between looking at a wave and knowing you're about to drown." He tossed the pear from hand to hand. She watched his fingers, the tendons in his wrist, the shift of his weight from ball to heel. She stared at the bond instead. There. A flicker of anticipation, satisfaction. She's going to move left. Zen dove right. The pear sailed past her left ear and splattered against the backsplash with a sound like a wet slap. "Ha!" She straightened, triumphant. "I felt it. I felt your smugness." "That was just smugness you always feel," Declan said, but he was grinning now, the worried line between his brows smoothing for the first time since the cliff. "Again." He grabbed the grapefruit. "Wait," Zen said, holding up her hands. "Time out. Toast check." She turned to the smoking toaster. 2 charred triangles sat in the slot, blackened to carbon, practically humming with radiation. She pulled them out, using tongs because she valued her fingerprints, and dropped them onto a plate. "Your toast," she said, sliding it across the counter. "Burnt offering to the gods of anxiety." Declan caught the plate without looking. His eyes never left hers. "Eat first. You'll need the energy." "I'm not eating that. That's not toast. That's a charcoal briquette." "It's tactical carbon scoring," he said, deadpan. "Absorbs negative energy." "You're ridiculous." "You love me." "I tolerate you because you're good at sex and throwing fruit." He laughed, the sound surprised out of him, rough and genuine. And in that split second of softness, he threw the banana. It came in a yellow blur, curved and ridiculous and moving at 60 miles an hour. Zen didn't think, she felt. Joy, play, love disguised as attack. She caught it, one-handed, her fingers closing around the peel, the impact stinging her palm but the catch solid. She stood there dumbfounded, staring at the banana in her hand, then at him. "Holy shit," she breathed. "There she is," Declan said softly. "That's the thread." The kitchen clock clicked over to 12:07 a.m. They both froze. The banana suddenly felt heavy in Zen's hand, the skin too smooth, the air in the kitchen too thin. The bond in her chest, warm golden, hummed a different note, a harmonic, a warning. Declan was beside her in a blink, not touching but close enough that she could feel his heat. "It's midnight," he said. "The witching hour, when the membrane is thinnest." Zen set the banana down carefully. "You knew it was almost time." "I knew." "So the fruit was a warm-up." He took her hand, his palm calloused and warm, and led her toward the back door. "The real training happens now, when it's listening." Outside the garden was silver. Moonlight turned the grass to mercury, the hydrangeas to pale explosions of ghost flowers. The air smelled of dew and pine needles, that impossible alpine scent that followed them now like a shadow. Declan positioned her in the center of the lawn, her bare feet cold against the damp earth. He stood behind her, his chest to her back, his hands resting on her hips. Not gripping, just present. The 36-hour rule had evolved. It had been 72 hours since the cliff. He wasn't caging her anymore. He was spotting her, like a weightlifter about to press something dangerous. The deadline hadn't expired. It had extended, become a permanent state of vigilance he couldn't shut off. "What did you feel?" he asked quietly, his voice vibrating against her neck. "When you caught the banana." "Happiness," she said. "Yours, it was bright. Yellow, if that makes sense." "It makes sense." His thumbs traced circles on her hip bones. "And when Aislinn took you, when you walked to the cliff?" She closed her eyes. The memory was slippery, like trying to hold water. "Calm," she whispered. "Not happiness, not fear, just calm, like sinking into a warm bath, like everything was going to be okay if I just kept walking." Declan's hands tightened fractionally. "That's the trap. Predators use fear to hunt. Avoiders use calm. They sedate the prey before the kill. You felt safe because it wanted you to stop struggling." A breeze moved through the garden, but it didn't feel like wind. It felt like breath. "Open your eyes," Declan commanded. She did. The garden was empty, but in the silver dark she could see things wrong, the angles of the fence, the way the moonlight seemed to fold in on itself near the old oak tree. And she could feel something else, a thread that wasn't golden, a thread that was silver and hungry and patient. "It's here," she said, her voice steady despite the sudden hammer of her heart. Not inside, but adjacent. Good, Declan said. He stepped back, just one pace, but the absence of his warmth felt like falling. Now tell me what I'm going to throw. What? She spun, but he was already moving, circling her, his bare feet silent on the grass. You caught the banana because you felt my intent when I was happy, he said, his voice coming from her left, then her right. Now feel it when I'm afraid, when I'm terrified that I'm going to hurt you, that you're not ready, that the next time it takes you, I won't be fast enough to... Thwip! Something small and hard sailed out of the dark. She felt it coming, a jagged spike of fear, sharp and metallic, cutting through the bond. She dropped to her knees, the object passing through the space where her head had been, and heard it hit the fence behind her with a thunk. A peach. He'd thrown a peach. She stayed kneeling in the wet grass, her breath coming hard. Declan's fear tasted like copper in her mouth, like blood and lightning. It was overwhelming, a flood where the banana had been a stream. Again, she gasped. Zen! Again. I can't learn to block calm if I can't handle the storm. She felt him hesitate, a hesitation that tasted like grief. Then she felt him decide. The next one came from the right. She felt his resolve, hard and dark, and she leaned left, the air displaced by a nectarine. Then another, an apricot, a fig, a hailstorm of soft fruit, each one carrying an emotional payload, fear, hope, desperation, love so fierce it burned. She moved without thinking, dancing in the moonlight, her body interpreting the bond faster than her mind could process. She was catching some now, an apple, a plum. Her hands were full, her fingers sticky with juice, her heart hammering against her ribs. Then she felt it, the wrongness. Not Declan's intent, something else. Something silver and cold and calm that wanted her to stop moving, just breathe, just rest. It's been such a long day, and don't you want to sleep? Iceland. But beneath the calm, she felt something new. Not hunger, hiding, the emotional signature of a creature trying desperately not to be noticed by something bigger and hungrier than itself. Her feet rooted to the earth. The air turned warm, seductive, syrup-thick. She could see the rift opening in the oak tree's shadow, a fold of darker dark, and inside it, something tall and thin, reaching out with hands that had too many joints. Zen, Declan's voice, raw and terrified. But Zen wasn't looking at the hands. She was looking at the absence around them, the way the entity folded in on itself, making itself small, making itself void. It wasn't hunting, it was scavenging, it was desperate. She felt his fruit coming, a final projectile, hurled with all his strength, all his fear, all his desperate refusal to let her go. She felt it in the bond, bright and golden and true. She caught it, a peach, soft and fuzzy and warm, and she threw it. Not at Declan, at the rift. The peach hit the fold in reality and exploded, not with pulp, but with light, golden light. The empathy she'd channeled into her hands, the love she'd caught, turned into something sharp, a blade of feeling. The rift screamed, a sound like static and breaking glass, and snapped shut. The oak tree shuddered, leaves raining down. Silence. Zen stood in the garden, panting, sticky with fruit juice, holding nothing but air. Declan crashed into her, his arms crushing her against his chest, his face buried in her neck. "Don't you ever," he growled, his voice breaking. "Don't you ever." I felt it, she whispered into his shoulder. She was shaking now, adrenaline catching up. I felt the difference. The banana was love, that... She gestured at the empty air. That was hunger disguised as peace, but also fear, not of us, of something else. She's hiding from something, Declan. She's not the apex predator, she's the prey. He pulled back, his hands cupping her face, his thumbs wiping tears she hadn't realized she was crying. You threw a peach at an interdimensional entity. It was a really good peach, she said, her voice wobbling. Declan laughed, the sound choked and desperate and proud. He kissed her forehead, her eyelids, her mouth. 36 hours, he murmured against her lips. You're going to say I told you so, aren't you? She asked. I'm going to say we're going to need more produce, he said. And I'm going to say... He kissed her again, softer this time, the bond between them humming in harmony. I'm going to say you're a weapon now, Luna, my favorite kind. Charred and fruity? Dangerous and mine. Behind them, the kitchen light flickered on. Suki's silhouette appeared in the window, holding a clipboard. Even from the garden, Zen could see her shaking her head and writing something down. Probably adding fruit-based interdimensional combat to the security protocols. Declan picked up the discarded peach, now just a peach again, soft and bruised, and pressed it into Zen's hand. "Breakfast," he said. "Then we work on grenades." "Grenades?" "Watermelons," he clarified, "much heavier." Zen took a bite of the peach. It tasted like victory and fear and the complicated sweetness of survival. It was 12:17 a.m. They had 36 hours minus 10 minutes left to learn how to fight the dark with whatever came to hand, even if it was just toast and terror and love sharp enough to cut worlds. Chapter 5, The Retention System and the 3 a.m. Accords. 36 hours came and went. Declan didn't sleep. He didn't stop vibrating. The deadbolts multiplied. The pack briefing was being held in the master bedroom, which was the first indicator that Declan had lost the plot entirely. The second indicator was the climbing gear. "Sovereignty Gala seating arrangements," Suki was saying, her voice dry enough to preserve meat. She stood at the foot of the bed, clipboard in hand, staring determinedly at a point above the headboard. "Alpha Marcus has requested that you and the Luna be stationed at the head table, between the Canadian delegation and the Bureau of Preternatural Affairs. I've prepared a risk assessment." Zen tried to nod. It was difficult because she was currently harnessed to Declan's chest. He'd built it himself. 3 carabiners, 2 climbing ropes rated for 1,000-pound loads, and a tactical vest modified with what appeared to be a baby carrier insert. Except the baby was a 30-year-old woman with a master's in criminal psychology and a developing ability to weaponize feelings. The harness connected her sternum to his, allowing approximately 18 inches of movement in any direction before the tension cord snapped her back against him like a yo-yo. "Declan," she whispered, "I can't reach the coffee." "You don't need coffee," he said. He was wearing sweatpants, a harness of his own, and no shirt. His hand rested on her hip, thumb tracing circles in a rhythm that said mine and stay, and if you move, I will die. You need to focus on the threat matrix. Warren, standing by the window, was examining the drapes with the intensity of a man calculating their tensile strength. Fallon sat rigidly in the armchair, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Torrin appeared to be taking notes, but Zen could see he was actually drawing a dungeon map. "The threat matrix," Suki continued, clicking her pen, "indicates that the gala is a trap. However, legally, you cannot decline without forfeiting Alpha Marcus's appeal. Therefore, I've proposed," she paused, adjusted her glasses, "a compromise." Declan growled. The sound vibrated through the harness and into Zen's ribs. "No compromises. She's not leaving the house." "The gala is in 48 hours, Suki said. "Unless you plan to attend via video conference, and I've checked. The venue's Faraday cage prohibits digital streaming. You will need to physically transport the Luna. I've prepared a tactical cart." "A what?" Zen asked. "A cart. With wheels and bulletproof glass. I've been reading about medieval relic transport. I'm not a relic." "You're a strategic asset who currently requires constant physical contact," Suki said. "You are, by definition, portable." Declan's hand flexed on Zen's hip. "She's not going in a cart." "Then perhaps the harness system." A sound interrupted them. A thwip, followed by a muffled clang. Everyone froze. Fallon's head snapped toward the balcony doors. The bedroom had been converted into a fortress. Garlic strings hung from the ceiling fan, not because garlic worked on Island, but because Declan had read somewhere that supernatural entities dislike strong odors. Iron filing salt lines crisscrossed the hardwood. The windows were taped with X-shaped strips of duct tape that Declan insisted disrupted planar geometry. And running between the bedposts, the dresser, and the balcony railing was a complex web of climbing rope, carabiners, and what appeared to be a clothesline strung with Declan's boxers. "Contact left," Fallon hissed. A figure in matte black tactical gear was currently dangling upside down from the clothesline, tangled like a spider in a drunk web, one foot caught in a carabiner, the other in a pair of boxer briefs. Declan moved. He didn't unclip from Zen. He simply moved, taking her with him, the harness yanking her off the bed and onto her feet as he lunged for the window. The attacker tried to raise a tranq gun, but the elastic waistband of Declan's underwear snapped taut, jerking the weapon out of their hand. "Told you!" Declan snarled, his arm crushing Zen against his side as he kicked the balcony door open. "Perimeter defense!" Warren was already there, shifting partially, claws extending to pin the intruder's shoulders. The attacker's mask slipped, a human mercenary, eyes wide with confusion and nylon boxer material. "Who sent you?" Declan demanded. The mercenary just stared at the underwear ensnaring his ankle. What the fuck is this? Tactical counter-intrusion mesh, Suki said, writing something on her clipboard. Also known as the Luna retention system. Alpha, I suggest we interrogate him downstairs. The harness has a quick release for bathroom breaks. You may use that to transfer the Luna to the bathroom, while... No, Declan said. He stays. We search him here. Zen stays clipped. Declan, Zen said, her voice vibrating with the effort of patience. I need to pee, and I cannot do it while attached to you like a jetpack. Then we hold it. I'm holding it by proxy. The pack exchanged looks. Fallon's dungeon map had acquired a new wing. 3 hours later, the mercenary was zip-tied to a kitchen chair, downstairs, after Zen had threatened to weaponize her empathy into a migraine if Declan didn't unclip her for 3 minutes. He was singing like a bird, something about a bounty, a silver-haired client, the word hollow repeated like a prayer. Declan was interrogating him with a patience that was more terrifying than shouting. Zen sat on the kitchen island, finally unclipped, eating toast. Declan had burned it. He was burning a lot of toast lately. She'd realized 3 days ago that the char level corresponded to his anxiety. Light golden meant calm, mahogany meant stressed, pure carbon meant someone tried to kill you. This toast was coal. Zen ate it anyway. It crunched like armor plating. 36 hours, Declan was saying to the mercenary, his voice dangerously soft. That's how long she's been back. You came in 36 hours. Wasn't me, the mercenary babbled. Was the contract. The silver lady, she said, you'd be distracted. Said the Alpha was compromised. Said the Luna was a door. Zen stopped chewing. Declan's shoulders tightened. He reached out, not for the mercenary, but for her. His hand found hers across the island, lacing their fingers together. The bond flared, golden and protective. Get him out, Declan said to Warren. Call the Bureau. I want to know who's funding this. As they dragged the mercenary away, Zen felt Declan's exhaustion hit her through the bond, a wave of gray static, mental tires screeching toward a cliff. He hadn't slept in 5 days now. The 36 hours had reset 3 times, and he was no closer to believing she was solid. He was living in permanent emergency mode. Bed, she said, sliding off the counter. Now! I need to check the perimeter. You need to sleep. You're no good to me hallucinating. She tugged his hand. Come on. I'll let you clip us together, but you have to actually close your eyes. He followed, docile for once, the big bad wolf reduced to a sleep-deprived shadow. 3:17 a.m. Zen woke because Declan was drooling on her shoulder. He was deeply asleep, finally crashed, his face buried in her neck, one arm locked around her waist in a death grip. The harness was still on. He'd insisted they sleep in it, but he'd forgotten to clip the safety cord. He was holding her through sheer, exhausted instinct. Carefully, she unpeeled his fingers, one by one. He murmured something, mine, warm, stay, but didn't wake. She slid out of the harness, inch by inch, holding her breath. When her feet hit the floor, she stood frozen for a count of 60, waiting for the growl. It didn't come. Zen padded downstairs in socks and his flannel shirt. The kitchen light was on. Suki sat at the table, surrounded by files, a laptop, and 3 cups of coffee in various stages of consumption. She looked up when Zen entered, raised an eyebrow, and clicked her pen. So, Suki said, the retention system failed. It didn't fail. He just forgot to lock the carabiner. Zen poured herself coffee. You're up late. I'm cataloging. Suki pushed a file across the table. It was labeled Luna Empathic Response Matrix. Confidential. Zen opened it. Inside were charts. Color-coded charts. Apple. Fear response, 0.3 seconds. Banana. Joy response, 0.1 seconds. Peach, love/fear hybrid, 0.05 seconds. There were graphs, regression analyses, and a page titled Preliminary Data on Interdimensional Empathic Projection. You've been studying me, Zen said. I've been studying the weaponization of emotional processing, Suki corrected. She adjusted her glasses. The gesture didn't hide the tremor in her fingers. You're the only subject available. Also, I'm terrified, and when I'm terrified, I organize. Zen sat down. The chair creaked. You're terrified? Suki looked at her. Really looked at her. Under the efficiency, the dry humor, the clipboards, Suki's eyes were red-rimmed and wide. Alpha nearly died getting you back. Not just physically. He ran through the spirit paths. He tore himself into pieces and stitched himself back together with sheer, possessive instinct. If he'd been even 30 seconds slower, you would have stepped into that rift and we would have lost, everything. She tapped the file. So yes, I'm terrified. I'm terrified that the next time it happens, the harness won't work, the toast won't burn, and I'll be filing paperwork for a pack that no longer has a Luna. Or an Alpha. Because he wouldn't survive losing you. Zen reached out. She touched Suki's hand, the first time she'd ever initiated contact with the beta. She let her empathy unfurl, just a thread, just a whisper. She felt Suki's fear, metallic, cold, and beneath it something warm, loyalty, fierce, protective, familial. I can teach you, Zen said quietly, how to read him. When he's lying about being okay, when he's about to do something stupidly heroic. Suki's breath caught. Why? Because you're the only one who knows where the bodies are buried, Zen said, and I'm the only one who can throw a peach at an interdimensional entity. We need an alliance against him. She tilted her head toward the ceiling. Against the portable Luna protocols, against the idea that I'm a package to be carried. Suki's mouth twitched. I got the harness idea from a forum. I know. When your mate becomes a portal, a practical guide. You've been reading my browser history. I'm married to your Alpha. I have access to the pack server. Also, I was bored while he was measuring me for the tactical cart. Zen sipped her coffee. You're going to teach me the emotional range protocols. How to project instead of just receiving. How to make the empathy into a weapon, not just a shield. And in return, I teach you how to feel Declan's tells, Zen said. Starting with the toast. Light brown means he's plotted 3 moves ahead. Blackened means he's running on instinct and going to get himself killed. And when he's quiet, absolutely silent, like he was tonight with the mercenary, that means he's already decided to burn the world down. That's when you stop filing paperwork and start hiding the matches. Suki was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her file and pulled out a second folder. Emotional grenade protocols. Experimental. It'll take more than form thread, Suki said. It'll take you learning to weaponize the entire pack's emotions, not just his, all of us. I'm listening. And I want the toast lessons, Suki said. I've been eating charcoal for 3 days because I couldn't tell if refusal would trigger a dominance challenge. Zen laughed. It was a small sound, but it was real. Behind them, the floorboard creaked. They both froze. But it wasn't Declan. It was just the house settling, the wind, the night. The 2 women looked at each other across the table, Luna and Beta, empath and organizer, chaos and order, and shook hands. To the alliance, Suki said. To not being portable, Zen replied. In the bedroom upstairs, Declan stirred in his sleep, reached for the empty harness, and growled softly into the pillow. But he didn't wake. He would, though. Soon. And when he did, he'd find 2 women ready to fight for him, and maybe, if the training went well, teach him that love wasn't something you strapped down with carabiners, but something you armed with intent. The charcoal toast sat on the counter between them, cooling. Outside, the 3 a.m. turned to 4 a.m., and the gala drew 24 hours closer. They had work to do. Chapter 6. The Proxy War. The Bureau of Preternatural Affairs. Gala was held in a converted Gilded Age railway station. Vaulted glass ceilings, iron ribs like a whale's skeleton, and enough crystal chandeliers to fund a small nation. Declan looked miserable in his tuxedo, which had been modified by Suki with quick-release seams and internal climbing harness loops that currently dug into Zen's ribs through her silk sheath dress. He kept his hand on the small of her back, thumb tracing circles that said, "Stay and mine, and if you disappear, I will burn this building down." You're kneading my spine like dough, Zen whispered, smiling for the cameras. You're breathing too fast, he murmured back, his lips brushing her earlobe. Your heart rate is elevated. We're in a room full of alphas who can smell anxiety. I'm performing. Perform slower. They were announced, Alpha Declan Carver and Luna Zen Carver, Territory 7, and descended the marble stairs like a wedding cake topper designed by someone with a violence fetish. Declan looked like a warlord in formal wear. Zen looked like a diplomat with a knife strapped to her thigh. Suki had insisted, if you can't wear the harness, wear the hardware. The separation came immediately. Alpha Carver, a voice boomed. Director Vane, bureau chief, human, but with the predatory smile of a man who'd filed wolves into tax brackets. The Sovereignty Subcommittee requires your presence for the Marcus appeal. Immediately. Declan's hand flexed on Zen's back. No. It's fine, Zen said, turning to face her husband. She kept her smile bright, her eyes hard. Go negotiate. Try not to challenge anyone to single combat. I can smell her, Declan said, barely moving his lips. The Silver Lady, she's here, south corner by the champagne fountain. Zen didn't look. She reached up, adjusted his bow tie, and slipped her hand into his jacket pocket. Her fingers found the folded napkin there, crisp, warm, full of burnt toast crumbs. Carbon scoring, protection, love compressed into charcoal. 30 feet, she reminded him. Maximum effective range for the bond. Don't go further. 30 feet, he agreed. He caught her wrist, pressed his lips to her pulse point, tasting her heartbeat, and released her with visible reluctance. He followed Vane into the private chambers. The distance pulled like a hook in Zen's sternum, the golden thread stretching thin, but not snapping. Suki materialized at her elbow, wearing a severe black dress that looked like a funeral for a filing cabinet. She handed Zen a champagne flute. It was empty. Diversion status? Zen asked, accepting the glass. Tactical cart is staged in the service corridor, Suki said, her eyes scanning the crowd with the efficiency of a targeting computer. Modified dessert trolley, bulletproof plating, silver nitrate misting system, and emergency harness straps rated for 300 pounds. I've labeled it almond croissants. You're a genius! I'm terrified. There. Suki's chin lifted fractionally. By the fountain. Silver hair, gray dress, drinking water like it's poison. Zen looked. The Silver Lady was beautiful in the way glaciers were beautiful, sharp, cold, and moving slowly enough to seem still. Her hair was metallic, literally. It caught the light like tinfoil. She was speaking to a delegation from the Canadian PAX, her smile reaching her eyes but not her soul. When she laughed, it sounded like wind chimes in an empty house. Zen reached for her empathy. She'd been practicing, fruit at midnight, toast at dawn, Suki's fear at 3 a.m. She opened the mental floodgates just a crack, letting the room's emotional weather wash over her. Alphas, copper and lightning, aggressive and territorial. Lunas, warm honey, protective, calculating. Humans, iron and static, nervous but hungry. And then, hollow. A void. A space where emotion should be but wasn't. Not calm. Calm had texture, a smooth glass surface. This was absence, vacuum, a hunger that had eaten itself and kept chewing. Zen's champagne flute cracked in her hand. Suki took it smoothly, replacing it with another empty one. She's not human, Zen whispered. Not shifter either. She's a doorway, wearing skin. Islan, Suki confirmed. She adjusted her glasses, which glinted with a faint blue light, recording. The anchor. She's opened herself to the entity. It's using her like a modem. Zen's fingers found the small clutch dangling from her wrist. Inside, nestled among lipstick and the burnt toast crumbs, was the grenade. Suki had built it from clinical empathy data and raw pack instinct, a concentrated burst of Declan's protective rage, captured during a training session where Zen had pretended to be in danger. It looked like a lipstick tube. It felt like a migraine, wrapped in nuclear potential. The plan was simple. Zen would approach the Silver Lady, offer condolences for the tragic wind farm misunderstanding, and brush past her close enough to plant the grenade. Suki would then trigger the diversion, the tactical cart careening through the ballroom, spraying croissants and tear gas, and in the chaos, the grenade would detonate, flooding the Silver Lady with Declan's territorial fury, forcing the entity to detach from its anchor. Simple, clean, non-lethal, probably. Zen started moving, 30 feet. The bond hummed. She felt Declan on the other end, a bright star in a back room, his anger building as Vane questioned his fitness to lead. 20 feet. She could smell the Silver Lady now. Ozone and pine needles, the alpine scent of the cliff. 10 feet. The Silver Lady turned. Her eyes were wrong. The irises were silver, but the pupils were vertical slits like a goat's. Or a door's. Luna Carver, the Silver Lady said. Her voice was layered, like two people speaking in imperfect unison. You look warm. You're warm. The words from the microwave, from the rift. I run hot, Zen said, extending her hand to shake. The Silver Lady's hand was ice. As they touched, Zen felt the hollowness reach for her, a sucking emptiness trying to pull her in, to wear her like a coat. Zen palmed the grenade and dropped it. not on purpose. The Silver Lady's grip tightened, fingers bone cold and strong, and Zen's hand spasmed. The lipstick tube hit the marble floor with a tick that sounded like a gunshot. No, 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 no. The Silver Lady looked down, smiled. A gift? How? It detonated. The trigger was pressure sensitive. The fall was enough. The blast wasn't physical, it was emotional. A sonic boom of rage, possession, and feral protectiveness that expanded outward in a shockwave of gold and red. It didn't hit the Silver Lady. It hit everyone. The room went silent. Then every alpha in the vicinity, Marcus, the Canadians, the bureau directors, the security detail, dropped to their knees. Not gradually, not politely, they fell. Knees cracked on marble, throats bared instinctively, heads bowed with such violence that Zen heard vertebrae pop. A wave of submission rippled outward from the epicenter, leaving Zen standing alone in a sea of bowed heads, the Silver Lady frozen beside her, her face contorted in confusion because she couldn't feel it. She was hollow. She had no wolf to submit. But Declan did. The doors to the chamber burst open. Declan stood there, chest heaving, bow tie shredded, eyes pure gold. He hadn't felt the rage. He'd felt the amplification. Zen hadn't just projected his emotions. She'd taken them and turned them into a force of nature, a dominant frequency that overrode every other alpha signal in the room. He looked at the kneeling alphas. He looked at Zen. He looked at the Silver Lady. What? He snarled, his voice echoing with a harmonic that made the chandeliers rattle. Did you do? But he wasn't asking Zen. He was asking the room, claiming it. The submission deepened, the alphas pressing their foreheads to the floor, whining softly. Zen realized with a kind of terrible clarity that she hadn't weaponized empathy. She'd weaponized him, and he was magnificent. Suki, crouched behind the tactical cart in the doorway, gave Zen a thumbs up. The Silver Lady, cut off from her puppeted minions, her anchor body trembling with the effort of holding Aislinn inside, stepped back, and fled toward the service entrance, silver hair flashing like a warning. Declan, Zen said softly. He crossed the room in 3 strides, not stopping until he was touching her, hand on her face, forehead to forehead, the bond snapping back into alignment with a physical click that Zen felt in her teeth. I felt you, he whispered, his voice rough. You used me like a gun. Like a grenade, she corrected. You're not a gun, you're ordnance. I'm going to kill Suki for giving you that device. No, you're not. You're going to buy her a raise. Around them, the alphas were recovering, shaking off the compulsion, looking at Declan with new eyes. Not fear, but awe. He hadn't just submitted them. Zen had amplified him until he was the only signal in the room. Director Vane was still on his knees, staring up at them. That, he rasped, was a violation of the non-aggression accords. Self-defense, Zen said brightly, bending to pick up the empty lipstick tube. I was startled. You know how it is with newlyweds. We're very emotional. Declan's hand found hers. He laced their fingers together, his thumb pressing into her palm in a rhythm that said, We're leaving and we're winning, and you're in so much trouble. They walked out through the bowing crowd, Suki falling in behind them with her clipboard, the tactical cart abandoned, the Silver Lady fled into the night. In the car, Declan turned to Zen, his eyes still gold, his hand still clutching hers, hard enough to bruise. 36 hours, he said. I know. No, he said, pulling her across the seat into his lap, crushing her against his chest, checking her pulse with his mouth at her throat. 36 hours, until we find her, the Silver Lady, the anchor, and when we do... Zen felt his intent through the bond. No fruit, no toast, just the clear, bright edge of a predator who'd realized his mate was not just a weapon, but a force multiplier. When we do, Zen finished, her fingers finding his hair, I'll bring the grenades. You, Declan growled, his teeth at her ear, are grounded from ordnance. Then I'll just have to use you naked, she whispered. Suki in the front seat raised the privacy partition. The car sped into the night, the taste of charcoal and ozone lingering on their tongues. The enemy fled but not defeated, and the bond between them humming with a new frequency, louder, stronger, and weaponized for war. Chapter 7, The Hollow Siege and the Toaster Summit. They made it 17 minutes into debriefing before the Ravens hit the windows. Suki had just opened her laptop to catalog the gala casualties. 3 alpha with bruised knees, 1 chandelier, Declan's dignity, when the first thud cracked the glass. Not a bird strike, a deliberate impact. The raven that hit the study window didn't bounce. It stuck, claws scraping, head tilting with mechanical precision, eyes reflecting not red, but silver. "Contact," Fallon said, his voice dropping an octave as his canines descended. Declan moved. He didn't ask questions. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbed Zen's hand, and dragged her toward the kitchen. "Basement protocol," he snapped over his shoulder. "Warren, perimeter, Suki, weapons cache. Fallon, you're with me." "They're already inside," Zen said. Her empathy was screaming, not with fear, but with absence. The ravens were hollow, the air was hollow, the golden thread between her and Declan vibrated against a frequency of nothing. "Declan, they're not attacking, they're surrounding." The lights flickered. 12:07 a.m. Too early, Zen thought. She's accelerating the timeline. The kitchen was wrong. Zen felt it the moment they cleared the doorway. The same wrongness from the alpine cliff, the vacuum, where physics forgot to be warm. The back door stood open. 3 figures stood on the lawn, backlit by the security floods. They looked human. Zen knew they weren't. "Hollows," Declan growled. "Mercenaries. Drained." The closest one stepped forward. It moved like a marionette, joints bending at wrong angles. When it spoke, the voice was whined through dry reeds. "Your warmth," it said. "She wants to sample." Declan shifted, partially, claws erupting from his knuckles, fur rippling down his spine, but keeping human enough to stand upright. He pushed Zen behind him. "Stay back, don't touch them, don't let them touch you." "But I can feel them," Zen whispered. "I can feel the nothing, it's hungry." The hollow lunged. Declan met it. Claws met sternum. The hollow didn't bleed. It deflated, a sack of skin and chilled air collapsing into dust. But 3 more were already climbing the fence. Ravens swarmed the chimney, blocking the smoke, their bodies creating a dome of feather and silver intent. "They're testing my range," Zen realized. She grabbed Declan's shoulder, her fingers digging into the muscle there. "They're pushing me to project, to burn through our reserves." "Then don't," Declan snarled, ripping through another hollow with a sweep of his arm. The creature's emotional void fluttered against Zen's senses. Empty Tupperware, a bell jar with the vacuum still inside. "Conserve!" "I can't conserve if they kill you." A raven dove for her face. She felt its intent, or lack thereof. 0 emotional signature, just a vector of force. She reached out instinctively, not blocking with her hands, but with her empathy, throwing a wall of Declan's protective rage, still lingering from the gala, into the bird's path. The raven exploded, not into blood and feathers. Into feeling, it became a burst of warmth, of mind, of territorial fury, so pure, it shimmered in the air like heat distortion, then faded. But Zen felt the cost. A piece of the pack's emotional reserve, banked loyalty, stored trust, burned away in the projection. She was using ammunition that didn't replenish. Warren burst through the side door, bleeding from his scalp, dragging Fallon by the collar. "East wall compromised, they're coming through the garden." Suki appeared behind the kitchen island, a shotgun in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other. "Tactical card is disabled. They melted the tires. Zen, if you're going to weaponize something, weaponize it now." Zen looked at her hands. She could fill the hollows. She could cram love and rage and loyalty into their vacant bodies until they popped like overfilled balloons. But every projection took something from the pack. From Declan, from Suki, from the bond itself. Aislinn was forcing her to spend emotional currency she didn't have. The lights died. In the dark, she heard the breathing. Not lungs. Wind through pine needles. The alpine ridge, here in the kitchen. "She's here," Zen said. "Not just the hollows. Aislinn is reaching." Declan spun, covering her with his body, but Zen stepped out from behind him. "No," she said. "You fight. I communicate." She walked to the counter. The toaster sat there, unplugged since the gala, full of charcoal crumbs and failed protection. Zen plugged it in. "Luna." Suki's voice was sharp with confusion. "Carbon scoring," Zen said. Her fingers trembled as she dropped 2 slices of sourdough into the slots. "It's not just comfort. It's a medium. Heat transference, emotional conductivity." She pressed the lever down. The coils glowed orange in the dark. "If she wants to sample my warmth, I'll serve it to her. But I'm setting the temperature." The hollows paused. Outside, the ravens stopped their stamping. Zen closed her eyes. She didn't reach for Declan's rage this time. She reached for the memory of the peach in the garden, the softness, the sweetness, the love disguised as combat. She reached for the 3 a.m. coffee with Suki, the loyalty disguised as paperwork. She reached for the charcoal toast, burnt offerings, protection disguised as breakfast. She poured these into the heating elements. The toaster hummed. The coils brightened from orange to white, then to a color that didn't exist on the visible spectrum, a golden resonance that made the hollows stagger back. The toast popped. But it didn't burn. It emerged perfectly browned, 2 golden triangles crisp and gleaming, and on the surface of the bread, written in carbon patterns so precise they could only be seen by empathy, was a message. Cold, dying. 36 hours. Zen picked up the toast with trembling fingers. It was warm, alive warm, not the false warmth of the hollows, but real. She's not attacking, Zen whispered. She's crying for help, or warning us. The Silver Lady, her anchor, is dying. She has 36 hours to find a new host, or she dissipates into the void. Declan's claw retracted with a snick. He stepped closer, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his knuckles. She tried to take you. She's a predator. She's a refugee, Zen said, holding out the toast. The letters were already fading, the warmth dissipating. And she's desperate. Desperate things are dangerous, but they're also... She looked at the toast, at the perfect golden brown that Declan had never managed to achieve. Capable of learning. Suki lowered the shotgun. You're proposing we negotiate with the entity that tried to abduct you via kitchen appliance. I'm proposing we create a third option, Zen said. She broke the toast in half. Steam rose, carrying a scent like pine and yeast and something older. She wants warmth. I have it. But I'm not a battery and I'm not a doorway. I'm a... She paused, feeling the words form in the bond. I'm a translator, between cold and warm, between void and voice. She ate a piece. The taste was communion. It was the cliff, but reversed, not falling, but ascending. It was Islin's memory of being something else before she was hungry, before she was hollow, a creature of starlight and vacuum who had once known warmth and lost it. Declan took the other piece. He didn't eat it. He crushed it in his fist, the crumbs falling to the floor, and pulled Zen into a kiss that tasted like smoke and survival. You are not a diplomat, he growled against her mouth. You are not a translation device. You are my mate, and I will not share you with the dark. You're not sharing me, Zen whispered back. You're lending me, like the toast, like the fruit. She touched his face, feeling his exhaustion through the bond, the deep fatigue of fighting things that didn't bleed. And when I'm done, I'm coming back. Because you burn the bread, Declan. You burn it to keep me safe. And I need you to keep burning, because in 36 hours, she's going to try to take me by force. And I need to know you'll be here, waiting, with the toaster plugged in. Outside, the ravens lifted off in a single black cloud, leaving the lawn empty. The hollows collapsed, skin and clothes settling into dust, leaving only the chill. The siege was over. The summit had begun. Suki walked to the toaster, ejected the crumb tray, and examined the residue. Carbon dating suggests the bread was toasted at roughly 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is impossible for this model. She looked at Zen. You're upgrading her. I'm teaching her, Zen said, and she's teaching me. We have 36 hours to figure out how to be warm without being consumed. Declan's arms tightened around her. 36 hours, he agreed. And then we end this. Not with toast, with teeth. With both, Zen said, leaning back against his chest, watching the toaster's coils fade from gold to red to black. In the silence, the refrigerator clicked on, and Zen felt, for the first time, a flicker of something that wasn't hunger from the other side of the thin spots. It was curiosity, and that, she knew, was far more dangerous than rage. Chapter 8. The 36-Hour Toast. The clock read 12:06 p.m. 36 hours had passed since the siege, since the ravens, since the perfect toast that had spoken in carbon. The packhouse was quiet in the way that meant everyone was holding their breath. Warren had fortified the windows. Fallon had blessed the thresholds with wolfsbane and silver. Suki had prepared 17 different contingency plans, all of which involved fire. They were in the kitchen. Declan stood before the toaster. He was wearing an apron. Kiss the cook, in faded letters, that Zen had bought him as a joke in what felt like another geological epic. His hands were steady. In his left hand, he held a loaf of sourdough, in his right, a knife. He cut the bread. 2 slices, exactly 13 millimeters thick. Suki had measured. You don't have to do this, Zen said. She was sitting on the counter, her bare feet swinging, her socks pristine and white and deliberately ignored. We could destroy it, unplug it. Throw it in the lake weighted with stones. I tried that, Suki said from the doorway. She had a fire extinguisher, but she also had a plate. It came back, in the same spot, with the same crumbs. Declan didn't look up. He placed the bread in the slots. His thumb hovered over the lever. I've been making toast for 3 weeks, he said, his voice low. Every morning since you came back. I've burned 74 loaves. I've perfected the timing, 11.4 seconds at maximum heat, then a slow reduction, golden brown, no char. Why? Zen asked. Because, Declan said, his eyes meeting hers. If she wants to talk, she needs to know I'm not afraid of her, and if she wants to take you, she needs to know I can provide what she needs. Warmth, without stealing it. He pressed the lever down. The coils glowed. 12:07 p.m. The kitchen lights flickered, the refrigerator hummed a harmony, and the toaster sang. It wasn't a mechanical sound, it was a note, pure and lonely like wind through a flute made of bone. The coils brightened from orange to white to a silver blue that matched the hair of the woman who had once tried to steal Zen away. The toast popped. It was perfect. 2 golden triangles steaming gently, the surfaces etched with patterns that looked like circuitry but felt like language. Zen could read them with her empathy. I am cold. I am dying. I am sorry. She's here, Zen whispered. The air above the toaster folded, not with violence, but with exhaustion. A shape emerged, not the towering angular horror from the cliff, not the silver diplomat from the gala, but something small, child-sized, translucent. A girl made of frost and starlight huddled in the air, her arms wrapped around her knees, her face buried in her chest. She was shivering. Declan didn't growl. He reached into the cabinet. He took out a plate. Not the good china, not the tactical ceramics, but the chipped ceramic one Zen used for late-night snacks. He placed the toast on it. He slid it across the counter toward the manifestation. Eat, he said. The entity looked up. Her eyes were voids, not black, but absent, like holes cut into space. But when she looked at the toast, something flickered. Memory. Hunger, but not the consuming kind. The hungry kind. She reached out. Her fingers passed through the plate, through the counter, but when they touched the toast, they stopped. Solid. Warm. She took a bite. The taste of it rippled through the kitchen like a stone dropped in still water. Zen felt it. The bread, the heat, the love that had baked into it. Declan's love, fierce and protective but not possessive. Offered, not forced. The warmth filled the entity like tea filling a cup, and as it did, she changed. She became more solid, more real. And as she solidified, the mystery of the socks unfolded in Zen's mind like a letter being opened. The silver lady falling through the darkness, her body failing, her daughter hanging from her back like a star. The cliff, the cold, the desperate maternal need to keep the child warm, even as the mother froze, even as she became the anchor, the doorway, the sacrifice, dressing the stolen woman in warm clothes before the void took her, not to prepare a vessel, to apologize for what had to happen. You were trying to save her, Zen said aloud. Your mother, the silver lady. You weren't taking me to consume me. You were taking me to... Replace her, the entity said. Her voice was wind chimes in an empty room. She is breaking. I am breaking. We are cold things. We need warmth to remember we are not void, but I did not understand. Warmth is not taken. Warmth is... Shared, Zen finished. Declan took the second piece of toast. He looked at the entity, this child of vacuum and starvation, and he broke the bread in half. He held out the piece, an offering, a treaty. You can't have her, he said, not because she's mine, because she's hers. But I can give you this, every day, every morning, if you learn to ask. The entity, Islin, looked at the bread, then at Zen, then at the toaster, which was still glowing with a gentle, sustaining heat. I do not know how, Islin admitted. I only know how to open doors, to be the cold between stars. Then be a door that goes both ways, Zen said. She slid off the counter. She approached the entity slowly, as one approaches a stray that might bolt. She placed her hand on Eslin's shoulder. It was cold, but not killing. It was the cold of a refrigerator, not a grave. Be our cold storage, Zen said. Our backup. When the world is too hot, when the emotions are too loud, store them in your void. Keep them safe. And in exchange, she looked at Declan. We'll keep you warm. Suki stepped forward. She took her clipboard out of her bag. She clicked her pen. I'll need to draw up a contract, she said. Entity Iselin, designation, domestic appliance, category toaster. Terms, 1 slice of toast per diem, provided by Alpha Declan, in exchange for services including but not limited to emotional regulation, void-based security anchoring, and interdimensional communication. Iselin took the bread from Declan. She ate it. As she did, her form settled, compacted, became smaller and denser until she was no larger than a bread box. She stepped, faded, slipped into the toaster. The appliance hummed. The coils glowed a steady, healthy silver gold. The kitchen was warm. Epilogue. The gala revisited. 6 months later, the sovereignty case was settled. Not in court. In the kitchen. Director Vane sat at the island, staring at the toaster with the expression of a man who had just discovered his tax code was sentient. Alpha Marcus sat beside him, drinking coffee, his knees still occasionally aching from the submission shockwave. The Bureau recognizes, Vane said slowly, that Territory 7 possesses a strategic asset of unprecedented classification. The asset, designation, Islin, colloquial, the toaster, provides verifiable interdimensional security and emotional hazard containment. Therefore, sovereignty is granted. Full territorial immunity. In exchange for... He looked at the counter. Declan placed a plate in front of him. 2 slices of sourdough, perfectly golden, steaming gently. In exchange for breakfast, Zen said. She was wearing socks. They had toast patterns on them. Vane picked up the toast. He bit. His eyes widened. It's cold, he said. On the inside, Zen agreed. Warm on the outside, Islin's signature. She's learning. The toaster dinged happily. After the delegates left, after Marcus grudgingly acknowledged Declan's fitness to lead and asked for the recipe, after Suki filed the final paperwork under miscellaneous, divine, Zen stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching Declan clean dishes. He was wearing the apron. He was humming. The toaster glowed softly, a nightlight against the dark. 36 hours, Zen said, and we ended up with a cosmic entity in our small appliances. And you, Declan said, drying his hands, turning to her, pulling her close. We ended up with you. Warm? Here. Mine. Hours, Zen corrected, but she kissed him anyway. In the toaster, Islin dreamed of stars, but she dreamed of them warmly. And when the clock struck 12:07, a.m. or p.m., she no longer reached to take. She only reached to toast. End.